Emma had always been cautious with online dating, but after weeks of friendly messages with Nathan, she decided to take a chance. His profile seemed perfect: a lover of books, a fan of old movies, and someone who claimed to appreciate the beauty in things. When he suggested dinner at the charming bistro downtown, she hesitated only briefly before agreeing. The bistro was tucked away on a quiet street, its warm glow spilling onto the cobblestone sidewalk. Emma arrived early, wanting to calm her nerves with a few moments alone. The soft jazz playing in the background and the hum of quiet conversations soothed her as she scanned the room for Nathan. When he arrived, she immediately recognized him. His profile picture had been accurate: tall, well-dressed, with an easy smile. But seeing him in person, Emma noticed something else: an aura of stillness about him, like he belonged to another time. His black suit was immaculate, his movements graceful. As he walked towards her table, she felt both excitement and a twinge of unease. "Emma?" he asked, his voice smooth and deep. "Hi, Nathan. It's nice to finally meet you." She extended her hand, but instead of shaking it, he took it gently and bowed his head slightly, a gesture that felt both charming and old-fashioned. "The pleasure's all mine," he said, with a faint smile. They sat and began to talk. Nathan was a captivating conversationalist. He spoke about his travels, his love for classical literature, and his fascination with history. Emma found herself hanging on his every word, yet as the night wore on, small details began to gnaw at her. Nathan never drank from his wine glass. He lifted occasionally, swirling the liquid around, but it never touched his lips. His plate of food remained untouched as well. Emma tried to ignore it, convincing herself he might simply not be hungry, but the nagging feeling persisted. "You're not eating much," she finally said, attempting a lighthearted tone. "Not for the usual fare," Nathan replied with a cryptic smile that sent a chill down her spine. Emma laughed nervously, trying to shake off her discomfort. She glanced around the restaurant, realizing something odd. None of the other patrons seemed to notice her. In fact, it was as if they weren't there at all. The waitstaff moved about, their gazes sliding past their table like they were invisible. "Excuse me for a moment," Emma said, standing abruptly. She needed to clear her head. Nathan's gaze followed her as she walked to the restroom, and she could feel the weight of it even after she turned away. In the restroom, Emma leaned against the sink, staring at her reflection. "You're overthinking this," she whispered to herself. The dim lighting cast shadows across her face, and for the moment, she thought she saw a movement behind her in the mirror. She spun around, but the room was empty. Returned to the table, Emma froze. Nathan was gone. The chair where he had been sitting was pulled out slightly, but there was no sign of him. Instead, a folded piece of parchment lay on her plate. Her hands trembled as she picked it up. "Thank you for the delightful evening, Emma. I've been searching for someone like you for centuries. Don't worry, I'll see you again soon. You can't escape the first taste." Her blood ran cold. She looked around the room. It was empty now. The candles on each table had burnt out, leaving only the faint scent of smoke. Chairs were overturned, plates shattered on the floor. The once cozy bistro now felt like a lifeless tomb. And then she felt it, a chill at the back of her neck. Slowly she turned towards the large window that faced the street. In the glass, she saw her own reflection, and behind her, Nathan's face, pale and grinning, looming just over her shoulder. Emma spun around, but there was no one there. Her heart pounded as she stumbled out of the bistro and onto the street. The night was eerily quiet. The only sound was her ragged breathing. She looked back at the restaurant, but it was gone. In its place was a boarded-up building, its windows shattered and the walls covered in graffiti. Emma's mind raced. Had she imagined it all? Was it some elaborate prank? As she walked quickly towards the main road, she felt a growing sense of dread. Every shadow seemed to stretch towards her. Every whisper of the wind sounded like a voice calling her name. When she finally reached her apartment, she bolted the door and turned on every light. But the feeling of being watched didn't fade. She checked her phone, hoping to find some proof of the evening, but Nathan's profile was gone. Their chat history had vanished. That night, Emma didn't sleep. And when she finally drifted off just before dawn, she dreamed of Nathan's face, his hollow eyes and twisted grin, and the echoes of his words. "You can't escape the first taste." In the days that followed, Emma tried to move on. She deleted the dating app, avoided the downtown area, and focused on her work. But the feeling of being watched never left her. Late at night, she would hear faint laughter outside her window, or catch a glimpse of a shadow that didn't belong. And sometimes, in the reflection of her mirror, she would see Nathan standing just behind her, his grin wider than ever. He was patient. He had waited centuries after all. What were a few more days?